deceive the teddy bear are here to play. If you don't come play with us, then we will kill you.
When most people think of a mad scientist, they imagine a man with white spiky hair, a dirty lab coat, maybe a pair of soot-stained goggles. But for Dr. Anna Sweetling, the image of Professor and Dr. Satchel always came to mind. He certainly didn't look like a mad scientist. He was young, especially for his profession, and he had clean ginger hair. But even if he didn't look the part, he certainly acted like it. He had multiple threats against him for performing experiments and studies that hadn't been approved or requested. He nearly had his licenses taken away several times. The only reason he was still around was because, even though he was mad, he was smart and dedicated. Once he started something, he wouldn't stop until he was satisfied, or until he got the answers he wanted. Anna couldn't tell you how many times he stayed in his laboratory for days on end, never emerging, not even to eat or get fresh air. Sometimes a strange smell would seep from behind the closed doors of the mysterious laboratory, and Anna would worry that the strange Dr. Satchel fell victim to one of his experiments. He always re-emerged, though, if only to report his discovery and then immediately close himself and his lab off again. But no matter how many times he re-emerged, or survived a failed experiment, or even nearly died at the hand of his own madness, he never really died. It was almost like he couldn't, or at least that's how he acted. Invincible, immortal. Nothing could stop him from discovering the truth, new secrets, new possibilities. If Anna didn't know any better, she swore Dr. Satchel could even prove the existence of God. He was just that mad. And it was that madness, that crazy determination, that made Anna fear him. That's why when the board of the SPL, the very organization that funded the compound Anna worked at and that hired her, told her she would be training under Dr. Satchel, she nearly threw herself to her knees and begged them to reconsider. She felt herself grow sick and weak in the knees. She wanted to cry, to scream, to vomit. Part of her even wanted to get fired rather than practice under that madman. But instead, she thanked the board, left the courtroom with her head held high, and drove home silently. It wasn't until she got home did she break down. Dr. Satchel was the worst person anyone could work with. Anna would rather deal with her terrible, cranky college professors than deal with that man. But she had worked too hard, come too far, and the SPL organization was not too forgiving. And she knew that if she tried speaking against them and their decision, it wouldn't be good for her and her future as a scientist. So she bit her tongue and went to bed, preparing for what tomorrow will bring as Dr. Satchel's new apprentice. Anna forced herself to look forward tomorrow, to her new position under the mad scientist, even if no other apprentice has ever survived a day with him. "Hey, sweet thing, I heard you got placed as Dr. Cook's apprentice," TK teased Anna as she scanned her badge at security so she could get in. TK was one of Anna's colleagues. He was the youngest scientist of the compound and, as a result, the rowdiest. He had a knack for teasing other scientists and getting into just enough mischief to be annoying, but not to get him into trouble. He also had a thing for giving everyone nicknames. Dr. Satchel's nickname used to be Sag, but when he threatened to go to the board, TK backed off and started calling him Dr. Cook behind his back. Anna's has always been Sweet Thing, ever since college, where she first met TK. It was supposed to be a play on her last name, Sweetling, but Anna knew TK just wanted an excuse to call her Sweet. "Hello, troublemaker." Anna tried to make her own nickname for him, but cringed at herself. It didn't feel right. "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at Dr. Lejean's laboratory helping him with the cider experiment?" "Nah, me and Legs are cool," TK responded, following her down the hall. "Plus, I wanted to see if it's true that you're Dr. Cook's new apprentice. Everyone's talking about it." Anna glanced around the halls, for the first time noticing that everyone was staring at her. "Dr. Satchel," she corrected passive-aggressively, "is going to be consulting with me on one of his experiments. That's all." Anna could feel her cheeks redden at the lie, but for some reason she felt more ashamed to admit the truth than to lie. She knew it didn't matter, though, as TK smirked at her. Dr. Cook isn't one to work with other scientists willingly. Anna stopped and turned to him. "But keep telling yourself that little lie. Whatever helps you sleep at night, right?" TK turned on his heel and started back down the hallway, putting his arms behind his head as he called out, Just try to stay alive at least for today, okay? I made dinner plans for us tonight, and I don't want to have to reschedule." Anna watched as TK disappeared into a sea of lab coats. Dinner plans? With her? She huffed and resumed down the hall, her cheeks red and warm, but she couldn't tell if it was because of what TK said or because of the growing knot in her stomach. When Anna reached the doors to Dr. Saddle's laboratory, she stopped. This part of the compound was quiet and desolate. All the surrounding labs and rooms were abandoned, either as a result of experiments gone wrong, or simply there were no scientists willing to occupy these rooms. Anna studied the doors. Strange liquid leaked and stained from the old hinges, and strange lights and shadows danced from under the door. The old paint that once covered the door had far since discolored, and started chipping and peeling. The keypad to open the door was so old and rusted, it couldn't take a fingerprint, or even a badge. It needed a code, which Anna wasn't sure even that would work. Because of this and the fact that she didn't dare to walk in without permission, she carefully knocked on the middle doors. The resulting echo from her knocks was much more hollow and loud than she had anticipated, making her flinch as she called out, "Dr. Saddle? It's me, Dr. Anna Sweetling, your new apprentice." The door swung open before she could even finish her sentence, and her eyes widened as her senses were bombarded by sudden strange smells, lights, and sounds. "Tis." The last syllable fell loosely from her lips. Dr. Saddle, despite what his reputation might entail, was clean-shaven and had a clean lab coat, and not a single ginger hair was out of place. The only thing that gave him that cliché mad scientist look was his eyes. They were crazed, glossy, tired, bloodshot, desperate. Yes, I know who you are. The board told me you would be coming." Dr. Saddle grabbed Anna's shoulder and threw her inside. She yelped and quickly spun around to face him, not daring to keep her back to him. He slammed the door shut, then glanced over his shoulder at her. Anna swallowed hard and held her notebook and pencil close to her. After scanning her body with his eyes, which made Anna feel violated, Dr. Saddle turned around to face her. There was a moment of silence before Anna finally cleared her throat and held up her notebook and pencil. "What would you like me to help you with? I can set up the equipment, or go get any needed materials, or I can even just clean if you—" No, the doctor mumbled, mostly to himself, as he once again scanned Anna up and down. "No need for that." Anna hummed nervously as the doctor suddenly started to circle her. She tried to follow him around, not wanting her back to him. But then he suddenly stopped, his unamused frown turning into a pleased grin. His teeth were surprisingly white and clean. Yes, you're perfect," he once again mumbled, more to himself. He walked past Anna to the room, and Anna turned to follow him, only then seeing the true state of Dr. Saddle's laboratory. There were no shelves, and all the tables had been pushed against the walls. The floor looked like it had never seen a broom, and the ceiling and walls were so filthy that stalactites of gunk had started forming on them. In the center of the room was one of the compound standard test tubes, touching from floor to ceiling and big enough to fit a grown man. On the far end of the lab was the cause of the strange lights and sounds, something that made Anna's blood run cold, and chills pinch her back and sides. There was a strange light that seemed to be being formed by an assortment of strange machines, though Anna wasn't focusing on them. She was focusing on the light itself. It seemed fifth-dimensional and two-dimensional all at the same time. It was sucking in all the light, energy, and air of the room while simultaneously radiating an intense and heavy energy. Anna's eyes and head hurt as she looked at it. "What is that?" she breathed out as she felt her arms fall to her sides, going numb. "Experiment 067154, Saddle responded simply from somewhere in the room. Anna turned to try and face him, but he suddenly appeared in front of her, gripping her shoulders. That crazed grin returned to his lips as he stared her deep in the eyes, as if seeing every fiber of her being. "It's going to change everything we know," he said before shoving her into the test tube. The door quickly closed, and she screamed as she tried to throw herself against it. It was useless, however. You could shoot it with a rocket launcher. Heck, you could drop an atomic bomb on it, and it wouldn't crack. "No!" Anna cried as she watched the doctor start rummaging around on one of the tables. "Why are you doing this?" Dr. Saddle suddenly stopped. "Why am I doing this?" He turned and faced Anna as she pressed her hands against the tube's walls. He marched towards the test tube, causing Anna to back up slightly. "Because it's my latest experiment. Because it's the greatest question we've all been asking ourselves. Because the board allowed me to. Even if they didn't, I would have found a way. I always find a way." His voice and eyes seemed to fade as he spoke the last part. "But why me? What do I have to do with this?" The doctor's eyes seemed to refocus as Anna asked her questions. "I don't know yet. But the board always chooses the right person for me. Dr. Saddle went back to rummaging around his table. That's when the realization hit Anna like a speeding train. She felt something cold and heavy like a giant ice cube slide down her throat and freeze the pit of her stomach. That's why Dr. Saddle's apprentices always quit or go missing after working with him. Why the board never fires him. Why he is always behind closed doors and never tells anyone, only the board, about his findings. He's been using people to experiment on. And the board has been helping him. Anna glanced over her shoulder at the nauseating light. It illuminated thousands of colors at once, some Anna has never seen before. It felt like she was being exposed to every secret and lie at once. She turned back, not being able to look at it. She paused when she realized something else. The greatest question, Anna mumbled to herself. She looked up at the doctor with wide eyes, her fingers curling against the tube. You're trying to find the meaning of life. Dr. Saddle erupted in a fit of laughter at this. Finding the meaning of life? No, I discovered that long ago. What I'm doing is discovering how life came to be, which should be the real question. The doctor turned to Anna as she narrowed her eyes in confusion. Matter cannot be created or destroyed, correct? He asked as he stepped closer to her, pointing a pencil at her like he was a teacher calling on a student. But if it can't be created, where did it come from in the first place? He whispered the last part, his breath fogging the tube just slightly. Anna's body shivered with both excitement and fear. You're trying to play God. Play God! What makes you think I'm merely playing? The scientist shook his head, his manic gaze fixed on Anna. I'm acting as God, defeating God, remodeling God, wiping away the face of God and recreating it in my own image. You're insane or divine, mad or genius. It's all just two sides of a spectrum you're too dull to understand. Anna looked between his eyes, trying to read him. And what do you need me for? Dr. Saddle's crazed grin returned. I'm not one without my fears, dear sweetling. You're going to tell me what's on the other side, what you see. That is, if you survive at all. He suddenly pulled a switch out of his pocket and flicked it. The tube suddenly started moving, and Anna yelped as she watched it pull her closer and closer to the light. Don't worry, that tube's nearly indestructible. Well, in this world at least. Who knows what it's like on the other side? Maybe whatever's over there can crush it like a paper cup. The tube stopped just inches from the light. Anna looked back at the doctor again, her brows furrowed and tears brimming at her eyes. But when she looked at him, all feelings left her. She wasn't scared or even mad. You really are as mad as they say, she growled out. Dr. Saddle smiled. What's that quote about being mad? Ah, yes. All the best people are. The last thing Anna heard was his laugh as she and the tube plunged into the light, and the last thing she thought was, Sorry, TK. I don't think I'm going to make it to dinner.